It's December the 22nd, 2021. 3 days to Christmas, so we're now in winter. So as we move along, I want to hit a few key topics today. We had a pretty big event on Sunday, and I think want to put it a little bit in perspective and see where we go from here. Of course, the key thing is that Joe Manchin has said he's a no on the Build Back Better bill, as they call it. I tend to call it Build Back Worse, but whatever. And basically, let's just kind of throw at any near-term prospect to pass the thing as it was from the House, pretty much out. Meanwhile, the Senate parliamentarian is tearing out some of the most obnoxious and unreasonable parts of it, such as the amnesty for a lot of illegals. So we're making progress on this subject, okay? Now, but on the other hand, the question is it really dead, or is it sort of on life support? And I think that, as I understand, our Democrat caucus there had a big conference there last night about the subject of what its status is and where to go from here. So anyway, by the way, if you like these videos, please subscribe. Give me a like if you have subscribed to help out with that algorithm to get this out to people. And we'll continue trying to get you this information analysis. So, my feeling is, first of all, you have to realize that fundamentally, it's always good when somebody who's otherwise, let's say, a foe does something that's favorable to your side. I mean, if you're in a concentration camp, and a concentration camp guard, maybe gives you an extra item of food or something, you could be happy that he did that. But on the other hand, he's still a guard, and he's still going to shoot you if you try to escape, right? Little joke there, but you get the idea. That Joe Manchin is a Democrat. He was a born Democrat. He's a mentee of Robert C. Byrd, who did in fact come up with the Byrd Rule years ago. So and has a lot of things in West Virginia named after him, as I understand it. Well, I've never been to West Virginia, so maybe I should go there someday. Anyway, the point is that that he's probably going to remain a Democrat. I understand he is getting offers from the Republicans to come over, and there has been some talk that he could conceivably go independent and then caucus with them. I don't know. I think he's going to stay Democrat unless they do something very severe to him, such as, they could retaliate and take away his chairmanship or something like that. And if they went that far, then he might consider leaving the party. But I think as it is, he's in a powerful position in the party and wields a lot of influence right now on a lot of things he cares about. So, and who knows where his mind is on a lot of issues, The other thing is, a lot of what I think he's been doing all along has been doing that, trying to maintain his position while pushing back for what he really wants. So I think that's it. So what I see going forward is he's said all along that he's willing to support a $1.75 trillion bill. That's a 10-year bill, not things that are just up for a year or two, and that would be as scored by the Congressional Budget Office, which may or may not be totally accurate either. But it's a lot more accurate than the gimmicks that were put in the original thing that were presented with a few days from the House. That was total nonsense. Okay, in other words, it might climb a bit when it really got implemented, but it'll be lower. What that comes down to is an average of $175 billion a year of extra spending, and he wants that to be paid for, and that's about what the tax package they had in the House bill would do. So. Now, the bad side of this is if they do, he apparently has offered some compromise positions to the White House, and they pretty much said no and went ahead and tried to roll over him. Now, I think the situation is the bill that we knew as is probably dead, but that don't mean they won't come up with something else, which will be smaller and more paid for. Now, the bad news is the pay for is still there, including all those IRS agents out there. And I'm not sure who they're really going to go after. They may hassle people. I don't know. Cost them money for tax consultants. People are really cheating, of course, are going to have some trouble. And people who are in gray areas may have some trouble. Most of what I do is kind of reported to the to the IRS by various sources, so they pretty much have the raw data. And when you put into a TurboTax, you pretty much get a number. So I don't know what they really do there. But if you were doing something like in the rental properties, well, there's a little bit of gray areas. What is an improvement and what is what is just maintenance and so forth, or things of that sort. And all those people that kind of work for themselves, those people that they do something on your lawn and then you pay them in a check and they just cash the check at your bank, rather than just depositing it. Small business people. I don't know. Waiters and waitresses. I don't know. It looks to me like the actual people that are going to be most impacted by this are going to be the people that the Democrats always claim that they really care the most about are really going to get the tax increase. And of course, they always talk about the rich, but the rich have very sophisticated, accounting firms and tax lawyers, and they don't cheat on their tax for the most part because they don't want to go to jail. I mean, prison is such a nasty place when you're a billionaire, right? It's a big come down from being a billionaire. I mean, for the ordinary working person, it's pretty bad. For the criminal element, well, it's just part of the life of being a criminal, I guess. But the point I'm saying is they don't want to go there. And so most of them, there's some exceptions, but most of them don't really cheat on their taxes. What they do is they exploit every legal loophole that their sophisticated accountants and tax lawyers can come up with for them to reduce their tax burden, but that's not the same thing as cheating. They also have lobbyists that try to get special provisions put in the tax law for their benefit. You could call that cheating, but legally it's not. And so that's why I say the target of that part of that bill is going to be the very people who may normally have thought the Democrats were on their side. Well, anyway. So I digress, as a certain character in an 80s sitcom would say. But at any rate, all I'm saying here is that the thing isn't totally dead, but it's kind of on life support, maybe in physical therapy. And I think Manchin is going to vote for a much more tailored down, means-tested, focused bill. And so the question is, can the Democrats get themselves together to throw out about 70% of the bill and actually do that? Or will the Manchin and Sinema people be willing to raise more taxes? And I think that's all what's going to be the topic for next year. But the great thing is that this, what I call the year of living dangerously, we've come out of the year in pretty good shape. Okay, now let's kind of go back and look at what we were looking at the beginning of the year. The Democrats had just taken control and they were going to, quote, transform America, right? And remember that their agenda included packing the Supreme Court with 4 left-wing justices that didn't give a rip about what the Constitution really said or meant. They were going to end the filibuster and pass gun controls. Of course, something like the $6 trillion original Build Back Better bill. And God knows what else, all kinds of green new energy stuff and just, and we have to look that a lot of that hasn't happened. Yes, they did pass a terribly wasteful $1.9 trillion Rescue America bill, which is the actual driving force for the increased inflation of the natural recovery from 2020. It's a mixture of both. And but it looks like we've been able to kind of keep the Democrats in disarray. We've preserved the filibuster, Supreme Court's intact, and although this court won't do what we want on everything, I think it's going to be a lot more pleasant than what would have happened if they'd have been able to pact it, and probably also rigged all the appellate courts and put more liberals on that too while they're at it, and who knows what else. I mean, this thing could have gone really bad. And as it is, because a couple of people in the Democrat Party stood up to it and held it back, I think we're in pretty good shape. And now everybody's mad, I know, on my conservative side, and I'm pretty conservative, but I'm a pragmatic person. I'm not looking at trying to feel good about things. I'm trying to get results. And when you're in a losing position, you have to figure out, how you manage things. And I think what we've been able to do by some compromise with some of the moderates in the Democrat Party has been to effectively keep keep the filibuster in place. And that slows everything down. And remember, when you have people doing things you don't want done, the best thing you can probably do when they have the majority is to slow them down. And I think that's happened. We prevent any real defections from the Republicans in the Senate. All 50 have held firm, okay, on the major issues, except the things they were allowed to go for. And remember, a million of things in that first infrastructure bill that was signed into law are things that President Trump would have done too, that the Democrats wouldn't give him the win, if we recall. And some things are things I'm sure he wouldn't have done, and I wouldn't do. And I'm sure if I could have a line item veto on it, I'd probably be vetoing a lot of things in it. But I'd have no real power. I'd just make videos and have a few followers here, you know. So my point is that I think we've come through it fairly well, considering the disaster that happened in 2020 election. Okay. And losing both seats in Georgia, that was a catastrophe. If we just had one more of those. But anyhow, we didn't. And that's where we are. So at any rate, that's the way I see it. I think going forward, we are going to see the Democrats may get themselves together and pass a bill, or they may not. The best hope for not, I think, is the fact that with the new restrictions on the amount of spending and how it's going to be paid for, there'll probably be much more infighting among the Democrats. The progressives are really mad at Manchin, and often they can't control themselves. And that's what we can hope for, that they continue to harass and irritate him to the point that he again strikes back. Now, I don't buy the story that he did what he did just because somebody said something insulting to him from the White House staff. I don't think that's it. That could have been the final straw, you know, but that's not the real reason why. He actually had an agenda of reducing the amount of spending to a certain level, roughly a third of what originally Bernie Sanders wanted. And I think I think that's really what that was mainly about. Also, remember, he's a Democrat in a very Republican state right now. And so he has to balance between, keeping his chairmanship on the one hand, which gives him a lot of power, and on the other hand, keeping his voter base together when he runs for election in 2024. I heard this guy named Tim Pool the other day saying, well, Joe Manchin probably won't get reelected. Now, Joe Manchin probably will get reelected if he wants to be. And I don't see him losing that. I mean, if he became a Republican, he'd be such a shoo-in, it wouldn't even be an issue. So, but as a Democrat, the state has some advantage in having one Democrat and one Republican from a very practical pork barrel type politics. That is, how much federal money you can bring back into your state. You see what I mean? And I don't think this thing about the mine workers union saying he should have pushed him to go for Build Back Better. I mean, do these people really represent the interests of their workers, or are they just a bunch of political hacks for the Democrat National Party? Well, I don't know. It doesn't look like they're representing their interests with all this anti-coal stuff that they're trying to put in these bills. Well, at any rate, that kind of sums up what I think there. So I suspect we're not totally out of the woods, but we're in a lot better shape than we would have been. And I think McConnell has done a reasonably good job of managing a bad situation. Doesn't make him very popular in some quarters, but it's kind of what needed to be done. Now, let's go on to one other issue before I close here. And that is this current COVID situation. Now, the thing about this I find strange is that we had a Delta variant going pretty wild here through Thanksgiving as we went into December when we first heard about this Omicron variant. And now they're telling us as of yesterday that Omicron is the overwhelming prevailing variant in new cases. And I'm sort of left with puzzled a little bit here. How does Delta go away that fast? I mean, if Omicron hadn't come along, we would be seeing clearly a Delta wave here that would be increasing in the northern states. Now, if you want to say what's the predominant wave maybe in southern states, it could be Omicron because the Delta wave, it's been gone down to a fairly low level, and now you're starting to even see some of the southern states starting to tick up in the charts too in new cases. And the people that are dying right now on the death list are probably people dying of Delta because they were infected, at least my estimate is on average 18 days ago, but some of them are more. And so that is So that's still going on as they face their treatment in the hospitals. The real question will be, will Omicron create a lot of hospitalization and death? And that's still up in the air. It seems like in South Africa it really didn't. And I don't think it really did yet in Britain that much either, although the South African population tend to be younger. And so that would be a group that would have a fairly low hospitalization level anyhow. My own guess is that it will do some damage, but that it probably won't be as damaging as the Delta variant was. And as far as immunization, I don't think anybody knows for sure yet. It seems like this is evading a lot of the immunity that was out there. But remember, a lot of that immunity was people that got their 2 shots. The last one maybe in March or something or whatever. And if you're in that early group, there's no doubt the vaccine effectiveness does wane over time, particularly in terms of preventing disease. So those that have got recent boosters, I think might have a fair amount of protection. I guess keep your fingers crossed if you did. If you didn't, well, I don't know. Best of luck on that, I guess. My own thought on the subject about the boosters is I think what we've learned is that this is more like the flu shot and less like, let's say, your traditional vaccines for polio and things like that. And, all those things where a shot seems to last for years and is highly effective at preventing the disease. This thing, like the flu, tends to mutate fairly fast, obviously, and particularly with the worldwide pandemic going on, it's going to mutate faster. And there you have a situation. And so that's kind of the way I look at that. So, people have talked about ivermectin as being a prophylactic, that you could just take the pill in order to prevent getting it. And hydrochloroquine was another one that was talked about like that, as well as using these things for treatment if you did come down with early in the treatment phase when just started coming down with the disease. My guess is let's think of the vaccine as the same way. It's a one-shot ivermectin prophylactic type thing. In other words, it does reduce the frequency of the disease and the effect and the severity, but it doesn't totally prevent it. And I don't know that means it isn't something you shouldn't get, because it's available for free, whereas the other stuff, I don't know how available it is. Apparently, there's pharmacies and doctors are trying to keep you from getting it, so you have to kind of have connections or a little subterfuge, I guess, on that. So at any rate, that's my viewpoint on that subject, but how it deals with Omicron is unclear. But another thought on Omicron that occurred to me: if in fact it is actually displacing Delta, that is, people are actually getting Omicron and therefore they don't get Delta because their immune system is already revved up against the coronaviruses. If that's what's going on and it's displacing it, then it really is kind of like an infectious vaccination that's spreading around, right? In that you get the Omicron, you get typically a milder case, and then it goes away, and then you have protection, perhaps. I'm not a doctor, and it's just a supposition that if in fact the two facts are true, that it is, that it has really, that Delta is really way down now within a couple of weeks, and Omicron is way up in all the new cases, then where did the Delta go? Something's blocking it. And if that's the case, you see, again, I'm not sure that is the case because, well, the data in this subject is not that good, right? Well, I've rattled on for long enough here. If you like to see some of my comments on social media, I do post on Twitter and Gab and Parler as well, and from time to time, particularly on Twitter. And so, but the links are below. And until next time, have a Merry Christmas.